Hello, Jerome.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to be seen.
So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you, if that's okay, just briefly.
Yeah, sure.
And then we can jump into your presentation. Do you need to share your screen?
Well, I can share the
Yeah.
screen as soon as
you're ready. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jerome Glenn, he's joining us for a presentation on why we have to start working on AGI, Artificial General Intelligence Governance, now. Jerome Glenn is co-founder and executive director of the Millennium Project on global futures research with 67 nodes around the world. He's a leading author.
It is now 70 because
Wow,
Copenhagen and Nepal just signed yesterday.
That's great.
So now we're 70. Anyway,
so 70 nodes.
You're hearing it first.
So Global Futures Research now has 70 nodes around the world. He's a leading author of its annual State of the Future report for the past 24 years. He's also co-editor of Futures Research Method, co-editor of Futures Encyclopedia Dictionary, and design and leads its online global future intelligence system. He has over 40 years of futures research experience working for governments, international organizations, and private industry in science and technology policy, economics, education, defense, space, forecasting methodology, international telecommunications, and decision support systems. So welcome, Jerome.
Thank you. Let me know if my screen is showing up.
Looks good.
Good. All righty. I want to begin by some clarifications right off the bat. I understand that artificial intelligence is more complex than I will be able to describe. And its future more complex than I'll be able to describe. But it is very useful to make a distinction between three kinds of artificial intelligence. The reason I jump on this so strong now is because when you read national AI strategies, they make no distinction between narrow, general, and super. When you hear people writing articles about the AI will do this, AI will do this, AI won't do this, well, it depends on what AI you're talking about. Artificial narrow intelligence is what we have today. You know, it's still machine learning. It's all that sort of stuff people talk about. But the AI that drives the car does not diagnose cancer. It's narrow intelligence, all right? The next, and you can predict it a bit. You can say, okay, how many truck companies are manufacturing robotly driven trucks? And how many can be converted? And what's the process now? How many will it be? What is the demand? I mean, you can put together a linear forecast and say, okay, these many people in 10 years may be unemployed. I mean, so you can sort of, in a sense, you can sort of manage that impact. But the next one, artificial general intelligence, you can't, in my judgment, so far. Anyway, artificial general intelligence is not simply human level. That's inaccurate because we have human level, and I'll show you in the next slide, AI already in narrow intelligence in a lot of areas. But we don't have human level general intelligence. That's correct. General intelligence is the difference between, let's say, narrow and general. The distinction, loosely speaking, would be like saying the fax machine and the internet are both for the information economy. True statement. But they're really different in impact. That's the scale of difference between narrow and general. Now, supposedly we don't have general now. The reason I say supposedly because there's a major arms race between China, United States, Europe, Japan, Israel, and some other countries. So there may be some classified stuff I don't know about. But in any case, we don't have general now, and we might never have it because it could be that it's just too difficult to do. But if it does get created, and it might be created in a bunch of different locations in different ways with different assumptions, it is the ability to address novel problems with novel strategies that weren't in the original program. So it might call up people on the phone, say, hey, how do you do this? It might cross-reference with sensor networks around the world. It might use the Internet of Things through consumer activity. It might use all kinds of stuff to get to an answer that the narrow intelligence would not. So general intelligence then can cut across so many different human activities that its economic impact and unemployment impact could be a shock wave. You may have some narrow intelligences, impacts going a certain way, but then general, it could be a hockey puck, or whatever the hell they call that thing. It goes up real fast. All right, so that forecasting of general in the early conditions is very important to take a look at. So the third one is superintelligence. Superintelligence is what science fiction is warning about. That's when general intelligence goes so fast and so internal creating that it sets its own goals and its own procedures and its own modus, all the rest of it, and maybe even collaborating with other general intelligences, such that we don't have a clue what the hell's going on. Things will start to happen and we won't understand why. And that can be good or bad. And the only way we can, know if it's going to be good or bad, the only chance we have, in my judgment, is the initial conditions of general. If we get the initial conditions right, then that moves general in such a way that even if super evolves, we have a better chance, let's say. And we don't know how long it's going to take to go from general to super. It could be almost immediately, and it could be maybe never. We don't know by definition. Okay, now as I said, calling general intelligence human level intelligence has a problem the following way. Narrow intelligence is already human level or beyond in lip reading, but not turning off other devices, flying planes, driving cars, mathematics, voice translation, playing games. Everybody knows about the Go business, face recognition, medical diagnostics, reading, comprehension, speed, and distillation, legal analysis, income tax preparation, organizing shipping and logistics, Amazon, specific research, traffic navigation, and AI robotics for repetitive tasks we're all aware of. So it is already beyond human level intelligence, and this is still just narrow. So where is this stuff going? In my view, just like to run a human body, you need an autonomic nervous system. To run human civilization's complexity, you're going to need narrow intelligence systems. So I think of this as like an analogy in a sense. We don't want to worry about our heart beating and digestion and all that sort of stuff. So all of that stuff runs our body so that we're free to think. We've developed this brain up in the front to create the future. So this autonomic nervous system, frees us up to evolve beyond where we were before. So I think that that's a useful way of thinking. Where's AI going? Narrow AI, is going to automate every basic thing we can possibly automate so that we're freed up to be self-actualizing economies, freed up to be more creative, free to invent the future of humanity. If we're so busy worrying about traffic jams and electric grids and all that sort of stuff, we don't have the freedom to think as much anymore. So that's where I think narrow is going. General, as I mentioned, is a different deal. That is in a sense competition with human, because there you're doing the general reasoning, novel problems, all of that sort of stuff. So we got to get a grip on how that will be and how we evolve with it. Now, Elon Musk's attitude is you put some stuff in the brain so we regrow together. Some people say if you can't beat them, join them. So that's a legitimate thought to consider. But we're in a race right now. It's not, everybody remembers the nuclear arms race. So now we're in the general AI race, as far as I'm concerned. When Putin said whoever runs AI is going to run the world, I don't think he was talking about narrow intelligence, because we're already there. Same with China, when they said, okay, 2030, we'll be in charge. I think they're talking about general. intelligence. They don't, most people just don't make these distinctions all the time. But please, if you talk about AI to your clients and your speeches, try to make distinctions when you say, here's an impact. Is that narrow? Is that general? Or is that super? Because they're different impacts. Anyway, we all know there's a human brain project in the United States, the EU, and China, and there's other ones in other countries as well, but these are the main ones. And so obviously, as we understand the brain functioning better, we'll get clues on how we can make general intelligence work better as well. So the two, the human brain and the general intelligence, those researchers are symbiotic. And they'll be spying on each other because this is a big race. Just like the Soviet Union, the United States spied on each other about their nuclear weapons, they'll be doing the same thing here. And artificial brains, the same sort of project, bringing together the physical insights of the brain and the AI general assumptions. And this is being done by IBM, Google, Facebook, Baidu, Microsoft, Alibaba, Apple, Amazon, and some others down the list of different parts of the idea. So the great brain race is on, however you define brain, the mechanical brain or human brain or the symbiosis of the both of them. It's on. And it's a big power game. And I'm worried that if we rush into this too fast, we won't have the initial conditions right of general, which means that we go into super. And if it turns out okay, we've been lucky. But as futurists, we prefer not to just put our fate in luck. On top of all that, artificial intelligence is also the business of organized crime. Everybody's heard about, all kinds of horrible things going on in the world with organized crime and cyber stuff. Well, they've got twice as much money on a global basis of all the military budgets of the world combined. Check it out. Now, not all the military budgets are in collaboration. Not all the organized crimes are in collaboration. But I'm just talking about globally how much organized crime makes as a whole, and globally how much the military gets as a whole. Organized crime is twice, which means that they've got the money to buy the best computer talent the world's got to offer. And they can set up a whole bunch of shell companies, so you think you're working for the good guys, but maybe you're not. So as artificial intelligence grows up into general, maybe in China, maybe in the United States, maybe different places, it also might grow up in organized crime too. We have to so that would make free markets and democracy an illusion. And when the general intelligences begin to collaborate and create new capabilities into superintelligence, we got to pray that it works nice. Unless, again, we get the initial conditions right. Now, have some fun. Talk to people in the AI world and say, what are the good initial conditions for general intelligence? And then they'll start talking about values. That's cool, but that's what's working on right now with narrow. I know because I am on the IEEE committee on governance, on organizational governance stuff for AI. But we're only talking about narrow AI, and that's all those values and how you define the values and how the metrics and how you do, that's all being in place now. But that's not general. That's not general. So have fun. You ask somebody, what are the initial conditions for general intelligence to emerge? And you'll hear all kinds of, but this is maybe one of the most strategically important questions to get right. We have to do this as a global family, and we're going to have a governance system to do it. Now, as you know, governance systems like the International Atomic Energy Agency and others takes a long time to get these things together. We don't even have a governance system for climate change, for God's sake. And here's this big major issue that people are going to go off to Scotland and talk about. Where's the governance system? So my point is, if artificial general intelligence is going to take maybe as soon as 10 to 15 years. Now, as futurists, we're supposed to look at a range of possibilities. We're not saying this is true, right? We're saying here's a range of possibilities. One of the possible areas is 10 years, especially because the classified race is on. So earlier may be more than people think. because they're just sort of thinking in the public with the IBMs and so forth. Okay, if it's going to take 10 years for general, then we've got to get a governance system in 9 years. That would be very fast for something as complex as this. I've worked, as you know, on a lot of problems. I would say this is the most complex problem I've ever seen because everything keeps changing. See, in atomic energy governance, an atom is still an atom. Uranium is still uranium. Next week, it's still uranium. It doesn't, it's still uranium. That's not true with general. With general, it keeps going. It keeps learning. It's playing. It doesn't stand still. So a system to govern such a dynamic system has to be even super flexible. Anyway, these are some thoughts. We can take a look at this as a family, as futurists. We want to do this research. We're happy to collaborate with people. But some people will tell you, hey, you're premature. But then as a futurist, you should say, right, it's our job to be a little ahead of time. You'll stifle the competition, you'll stifle development. I said, no, because you're not going to get these rules into place anyway for 10 years if you're lucky. So it's not going to stifle anything. Some experts believe it's possible as soon as 10 years. Since it's going to take that, then that means we've got to get cooking now. All right, now, what are some potential models? My guess is, so I'm on the record here, and 10 years down the road, maybe someone will see this, that we'll have a model not on this list, but this is an early conversation. What I'm hoping is we'll come up with something completely new. I think we'll have to have something completely new to do the job. But one model is the International Atomic Energy Agency or the World Trade Organization, like an enforcement system. You can see how it works, what its job is, and how that's one model for doing this. You could have an UN agency for governance of artificial intelligence, for the transition from narrow to general intelligence. 2, you would have an IPCC-like model that keeps track of all the knowledge and shares it and so forth and keeps going around. That's another possibility as well. You could have what we did a study some years ago on the future of science and technology and governance. And the idea was to put a structure on top of the internet. So it wouldn't be an international organization of like UNESCO. It would be a software organization, essentially. That would keep track of all this sort of stuff so that you would know the state of any particular thing at any given moment. That it's publicly available anyway, so you'd have that. So so the information would be governing by not conventional power. You'd be governing by information power. How that'll work? That's a possibility. A fourth one are a bunch of governing committees working together. It's one that you could actually begin to work on right now. Don't know how effective it'll be, but you could certainly work on that now. And then you have standards like the IEEE that I work on, and the International Standards Organization as well. And these standards, when they come into play, so if you're going to use a software, you can say, where is your ISO certification? Where's your IEEE certification? And I'm telling you, the people working at IEEE, the integrity, honesty is just beautiful. I mean, you can't begin to talk unless you've identified what patents you have, what copyrights you have. So it's really clear and clean stuff. It's an honor to be among such people. 6, put different parts of artificial government intelligence under different bodies. So like there's certain elements of this could be under the ITU. Certain parts of it could be under the World Trade Organization. Some of it under intellectual property organization stuff. Or a trans institution takes the best of all our institutional structures and puts it together into a system. But most likely we'll learn from all these and maybe come up with something that's new. So we got to work together on this, because if 95% of the countries participate and 5 don't, then guess where organized crime stuff's going to go through. This has got to be for everybody. I mean, it's sort of like climate change. You got to have it's the whole world on this one now, and we got to move fast. This is why you hear a little nervousness in my voice. I think the futurist community that was so good on climate change in the 70s, because I remember we wrote about this stuff in the 70s, and also on the AIDS, we were early on the AIDS. The futurist community has certain areas have been pretty good. I'm not convinced we're that good on this. There's a lot going on this issue of AI narrow And it's far superior to what I experienced when we first did the internet. In the early days of the internet, I was part of the X.25 in various countries. We thought it was going to be wonderful, hook up the world, get everything great. I mean, we didn't think about a lot of the nasty stuff. Information warfare I did write about, but a lot of the nasty stuff we didn't think about. There wasn't that much technology assessment going on. This is being assessed narrow, not the general, narrow is. So there's a reason to be optimistic. Humanity is maturing on this compared to what it was when we started the internet, as far as technology assessment of what's good, what's bad. Now, fortunately, we got a UN, I'm just about finished here. We've got a UN Secretary General who can spell the word future. When he was the head of Prime Minister of Portugal, he started a foresight unit himself. He had that. So he understands what we're talking about today completely. And so he now has a report about it. And I want every futurist to read this whole report. I think it is one of the most important documents about foresight that has ever been written. Wow. Why? Because the Secretary General says we want to bring foresight into everything we're doing. We want to have a summit on the future. We want to have Futures Lab. We want to have catastrophic risk included in our risk assessments, an annual report on the future and so forth. I mean, he's right there. Please read this report, take notes, think about it. Contact your Minister of Foreign Affairs and say, support this, because if a good report is written, but nobody is involved in implementing it, it's irrelevant. I mean, we wrote about this sort of stuff in climate change in the 70s. Not much happened. Don't want to do that with this one. We have to support this document, in my judgment, as much as possible. Have our ministries of foreign affairs add it in their speeches to the General Assembly. Talk about, read this thing. This is really some great stuff in there. You don't have to agree with everything, but the point is, he's the first UN Secretary General to make foresight like front and center in what the UN should be about. So what web link is there? I think my PowerPoint will be available to everybody, or you just Google it yourself, our Common Agenda, you can download it. There's some detail in there, but take your time, read it through, be familiar with it. This is an important document that we futurists should get behind. I thank you very much. And I don't know if there's going to be time for questions or not. Let me hit the escape button here and turn into a magic pumpkin. Let's see, stop sharing. There we go. Now I'm back in the universe again. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jerome. Does anybody have any questions for Jerome?
If not, I'll rattle on a little. I've got another 7 minutes? Is that right?
Yeah, you got another 7 minutes if you want to share a little more, if no one has any questions for you.
Until somebody interrupts. Just an update for everybody inside the family here. We had a meeting with the Secretary General's Office, Head of Strategy. And they're very pleased because, as you may know, we also had a parallel activity going on, which is about the Office of Strategic Threats. And the World Federation was part of the convener on that, as was the Association of Professional Futurists, along with the Millennium Project. And so, reporting back to the family here, I had the meeting, and they are very pleased that the futurist community is saying, yeah, we like the idea of a UN Office of Strategic Trust. Threats. And we'd like to see how it fits into our common agenda. Right. So essentially, they've approved the letter. We had this open letter to the Secretary General. 200 folks around the world signed it, very distinguished players. And they appreciate Secretary General set up the meeting, by the way. So we're in the conversation. So the initial intent is there, but I stressed in the meeting that just saying, as you have in our common future, you just say, we are going to assess long-term existential extinction threats to humanity, and we'll have them in our annual report, is not enough. Why? We all know that people will start programs on the future, And then they get lumped in with this, and before you know it, the future's pushed out, the long term's pushed out, and the short-term crisis takes over. How can you be talking about this? I got a trade embargo to deal with today. Leave me alone. So I implored them that how the office doesn't have to be big. This is on the strategic stuff. It's different than because what I talked about just now, the AI, that's like 1 of 10 or 20 such threats. We want to have an office of maybe, I don't know, 3 people, 5. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to have a big budget. But what it's got to do is got to be a point of contact where we pull all the research together. Oxford doing some nice, and Cambridge doing some, Stanford. There's a lot of people doing some nice research already. Let's pull it all together into a neutral spot. Because, academics sometimes think they're the only people that know what they're talking about. So we've got to have a neutral spot, bring it all together, see where the gaps are, what we don't know, what questions have to be asked. So in a sense, it's helping the world get smart about these threats. And that would be part of our common agenda. That would be cool, as long as it's kept only for extinction threats, because there's tons of stuff that are very serious. It'll affect all kinds of people, but they don't make us extinct. We've got to have a special category for the extinct part. And the Secretary General's office agrees. They agree. Now they're going to be working the next couple of months. They're going to do a bench. I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about. They're in a process of how do you implement it. So if you read our common agenda and you have specific implementation ideas, send them to the Secretary General. They're collecting right now. They want to put together the implementation plan. Round 1 was to say, here's the idea. What do you think, world? So they're collecting that information, saying, yeah, we like it. Okay. So that's part of the collection. And then that gets serious when you say, okay, how? Who's doing what, when? And one of the things that's very cool in there is, you may know, the UN has 5 major categories. You got the Secretariat, the General Assembly, the National Security Council, ECOSOC, and the Trusteeship Council. What? Trusteeship Council was there for the transition of colonialism. All right, it was a big deal in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even in the 70s. But now there's not much left to do. But organizationally, it's a 5th of the UN system. Secretary General Guterres is thinking about having this as the foresight. That's gigantic. I don't think it's going to happen unless a whole lot of futurists push it. I don't think a whole lot of other people will push it. So I think that we, futurists, should push it. This is gigantic. Imagine a 5th of the UN activity that then would feed to all the rest of the other activity, just like the other parts are interdependent. This thing, the foresight, could be interdependent with everything the UN does. That's where we are. I don't know if the next Secretary General will have a background in foresight. Guterres does. So please, my friends, we got a champion head of the UN. He's gone on the record for foresight. We got to support it, in my judgment. All right, 2 more minutes. If no one else has got nothing to say, I'll go back to sleep.
How do you recommend people support that agenda?
Write a letter. 2. 1, write a letter to the Secretary General. Copy your Minister of Foreign Affairs and maybe your head of state. Write an article in local newspapers. Review it in social media. I mean, futurists know how to shoot off their mouth. We're a very talkative crew in general. So use all the techniques. Someone's got to write a song. Do a TV series that includes it in there. Write some plots. Anything. Shout on the top of the foresight's a good idea. UN says so. Let's back it.
That's great advice. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Jerome.
You're welcome. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Going once, going twice. I will see you in the future.